Do-hyun Kim sat at his desk, looking at the thick folder that had just landed in front of him. The office was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Outside his window, Seoul's skyline glowed in the early evening light. "This is different from your usual cases," his boss, Director Yoon, said. She stood on the other side of his desk, her face serious. "Hollywood needs our help." Do-hyun opened the folder. Photos of a movie set spilled out. He picked up one that showed a room with burned walls. "A fire?" he asked. 9 fires in 2 weeks. No one knows how they started, Director Yoon explained. That's not all. Equipment breaks for no reason. Lights explode. People feel cold spots. And the strangest thing, the fires leave marks that look like writing. Do-hyun looked closer at the photos. The burn marks did make patterns. They weren't random. He had seen enough strange things in his 10 years at the Korean Paranormal Research Division to know when something was truly unusual. This case definitely was. "They're filming a movie called The Exorcist," Director Yoon continued. "It's about demons and possession. The studio thinks all these problems are just accidents, but their insurance company called us. They think something else is going on." "Why me?" Do-hyun asked, although he already knew the answer. He had solved more unexplained cases than anyone else in the division. He also knew how to keep secrets. "Because you're the best at handling both the supernatural and the human side of things," Director Yoon said. "We need someone who can investigate without causing panic. The studio doesn't want any bad publicity." Do-hyun nodded. He looked through more photos. Each one showed something stranger than the last. A camera melted from the inside out. A room covered in frost in the middle of summer. Dark shapes in the background of test footage. "When do I leave?" he asked. "Tonight. There's a car waiting to take you to the airport." Director Yoon handed him a plane ticket. "The studio will tell everyone you're a special effects consultant. That will let you move around the set freely." Do-hyun stood up and put on his jacket. He had learned to always be ready to leave at a moment's notice. In his line of work, timing was often critical. The longer you waited, the more chances supernatural events had to grow stronger and more dangerous. As he packed the folder into his briefcase, Director Yoon added one more thing. "Be careful, Do-hyun. This isn't like our usual cases. American movies about demons, they can attract attention from things that are better left alone." "I'll handle it," Do-hyun assured her. He had dealt with angry spirits, cursed objects, and things that had no name. But something about this case felt different. Maybe it was the way the burn marks formed patterns. Maybe it was how the problems seemed to follow the movie's shooting schedule. Or maybe it was the fact that they were making a film about exorcism, and real demons might be paying attention. The drive to the airport was quiet. Do-hyun read through the case file again. The problems had started 3 weeks ago, right when they began filming the most intense scenes. No one had died yet, but 3 crew members were in the hospital. One had severe burns, another couldn't stop shaking. The third wouldn't talk at all. As the plane took off, Do-hyun watched Seoul's lights fade below him. He thought about what he might find in America. A movie set was different from his usual work. There would be hundreds of people around, cameras everywhere, and constant activity. How could he investigate supernatural events in such a busy place? But that was why they had chosen him. He knew how to work quietly. He knew how to see things others missed. And most importantly, he knew how to tell the difference between special effects and real supernatural events. He just hoped he could solve this case before anyone else got hurt. Because if real demons were involved, things were going to get much worse before they got better. The movie set was bigger than Do-hyun expected. Large lights hung from metal frames above, and thick cables ran across the floor like black snakes. People rushed around carrying equipment, shouting instructions, and moving props. A young woman walked up to him, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Kim, I'm Jae-yun Park, the production assistant. Welcome to The Exorcist." She spoke clearly and professionally, But Do-hyun noticed the dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't been sleeping well. "Thank you," Do-hyun said, following her through the busy set. "I'd like to see the places where the fires happened first." Jae-hyun nodded. The worst one was in the props room. She led him down a long hallway. The walls still showed signs of smoke damage despite attempts to clean them. It started in a locked room. No one was inside, no electrical problems, nothing that could have caused it. They stopped at a metal door. Jae-hyun unlocked it and turned on the lights. Inside, shelves held various props for the movie: crosses, books, candles, and other religious items. The ceiling was black with soot, and strange marks covered one wall. Do-hyun walked closer to examine the marks. They formed clear patterns, just like in the photos, but seeing them in person was different. They seemed to shift slightly when he looked at them from different angles. "Has anyone tried to clean these marks?" he asked. "Yes," Jae-hyun said. "Nothing works. Even when we paint over them, the marks show through after a few hours." Do-hyun took out his phone and started taking pictures. As he did, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. His breath came out as white mist. Jae-hyun wrapped her arms around herself. "It happens a lot. These cold spots. They move around the set." She paused, then added, "Last week, Hae-jin got caught in one. He's still in the hospital." "Tell me about Hae-jin," Do-hyun said, still taking photos. "He was our best cameraman. During a night shoot, he said he felt something grab his arm. When we found him, he had severe burns in the shape of handprints." Jae-hyun's voice shook slightly. "He hasn't spoken since then. The doctors can't explain it." Do-hyun finished taking photos and turned to face her. "What scene were you filming when it happened?" "The possession scene, where the demon first shows itself." Jae-hyun checked her clipboard. "Actually, most of the strange things happened during scenes with the demon." They left the props room and walked to the main set. The crew was setting up for the next scene. Do-hyun watched as they arranged furniture and adjusted lights. Everything looked normal, but he had learned to trust his instincts. Something felt wrong here. "The fires aren't random," he said quietly. "They're following a pattern." "Do you have a schedule of all the demon scenes?" Jae-hyun nodded and handed him some papers from her clipboard. "Here's the shooting schedule. I've marked all the supernatural scenes in red." Do-hyun studied the schedule. Yes, there was definitely a pattern. The incidents were getting more frequent, and they always happened near scenes with strong supernatural elements. "One more thing," Jae-hyun said, lowering her voice. "The actress playing the possessed girl, she's starting to see things when she's not filming. Things that aren't part of the script." Before Do-hyun could ask more questions, a loud crash came from the main set. They rushed back to find a heavy light fixture had fallen, barely missing 2 crew members. The metal frame was twisted, as if something very strong had crushed it. "That was checked this morning," Jae-hyun said, her face pale. All the safety cables were new. Do-hyun looked up at where the light had been attached. Small burn marks formed a familiar pattern on the ceiling. Whatever was causing these incidents was getting stronger, and it was no longer content with just watching. "We need to talk to everyone who's had strange experiences," he said, "and I need to see all the footage from the demon scenes. Something is responding to this movie, and we need to find out what it is before someone gets killed." The screening room was dark except for the light from the projector. Do-hyun sat with Ta-woo Lee, the special effects supervisor, watching footage from the past 3 weeks of filming. Jae-hyun stood by the door, taking notes. "Stop there," Do-hyun said, pointing at the screen. "Play that part again." Ta-woo rewound the footage. They watched as the actress playing the possessed girl said her lines. In the background, a shadow moved against the wall. It wasn't part of the script. "That keeps happening," Ta-woo said, running his hand through his hair. "Shadows where they shouldn't be. Lights creating strange patterns. At first, I thought it was equipment problems. But now," Do-hyun asked, Now I don't know what to think. Ta Wu played more footage. Look at this scene. We used no special effects here. It was just a simple dialogue scene. But watch the candles. On screen, the candles on a table suddenly grew taller, their flames turning blue. The camera shook and the footage ended. The cameraman quit after that, Jai-yun said from the door. Said he felt something touch his neck while filming. Do-hyun made notes in his folder. How many people have quit so far? 7, Jai-yun answered. 3 are in the hospital, and 4 just left. They all say the same thing. They feel watched. They have nightmares. They see things moving in the dark. A knock at the door made them all jump. A crew member stuck his head in. Mr. Lee, they need you on set. We're ready to film the mirror scene. Tae-woo stood up. That's the big scene today. Lots of effects. Do you want to watch? Do-hyun nodded. As they walked to the set, he asked, what exactly happens in this scene? The demon shows itself in mirrors, Ta-woo explained. We have special glass panels set up with lighting effects. Should be impressive. The main set was busy with activity. Crew members adjusted lights and checked cameras. The actress sat in her chair, reading through her script. She looked tired and nervous. Do-hyun watched as they prepared to shoot. Something felt wrong. The air felt heavy, like before a storm. He checked the shooting schedule again. Yes, this was the most intense demon scene they had filmed so far. Everyone ready. The director called. And action. The scene began. The actress walked past the mirrors. Everything seemed normal at first. Then the temperature dropped suddenly. Do-hyun saw his breath in the air. Cut. The director yelled. The glass is fogging up. Clean the mirrors and let's go again. But when the crew members approached the mirrors, they stepped back in shock. The fog wasn't on the outside of the glass. It was forming inside, between the layers of sealed glass. As they watched, the fog began to form shapes, letters, words, not in English or Korean, but in something older, much older. Nobody touched the glass, Do-hyun said sharply. But it was too late. One crew member had reached out to wipe the mirror. The moment his hand touched it, all the mirrors cracked at once. Not shattered, but cracked in perfect patterns. The same patterns as the burn marks. The actress screamed. In every mirror, instead of her reflection, there was something else. Something dark. Something watching. The lights exploded, sending sparks raining down. In the chaos that followed, Do-hyun grabbed Jae-yun's arm. Get everyone out. Now. As people ran from the set, Do-hyun stayed behind. In the emergency lights, he could see that the mirror patterns were changing, flowing like liquid. They were forming a message. He took out his phone and started taking pictures. He needed to document this, because now he knew they weren't dealing with simple supernatural activity. Something had been waiting for this movie, waiting for these scenes, and now it was ready to do more than just watch. Do-hyun spread the photos across the table in the empty meeting room. The mirror patterns, the burn marks, and the frost designs all showed similar shapes. He had been staring at them for hours, knowing they meant something but unable to understand what. A knock on the door made him look up. Han-Sol Choi, the set designer, stood there. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. Jae-yun said you wanted to see me. Yes, please come in, Do-hyun said. I need your help with these patterns. Han-Sol walked over to the table and looked at the photos. His face changed. Where did you see these? They're appearing all over the set. In fires, in frost, in mirrors. You recognize them. Han-Sol picked up one of the photos with shaking hands. I haven't seen these in 40 years. Not since my grandmother showed me her books. Do-hyun sat up straighter. What books? Ancient Korean texts. About beings that live between worlds. Han-Sol sat down heavily in a chair. My grandmother was a keeper of old knowledge. She showed me these symbols when I was young. They're a language. The language of fear-eaters. Fear-eaters? Do-hyun asked, taking out his notebook. Beings that feed on human fear. Not demons, not ghosts, but something else. The old texts say they watch humans from their world. When they find a place with enough fear, they can cross over. Jae-yun walked in with cups of coffee. She had heard the last part. Like a movie set where we're filming scenes about demons and possession. Han-sol nodded. Exactly. All that fear, all that emotion. It's like a beacon to them. He pointed to different symbols in the photos. This one means gateway. This means hunger. And this. He stopped, his face pale. What does that one mean? Do-hyun asked. Coming through. The lights in the room flickered. Outside, they could hear the wind picking up, even though they were indoors on a sound stage. There's more, Han-sol said quickly. My grandmother's books said they start small, testing the barrier between worlds. But once they find a way through, they grow stronger. They feed on fear, and they know how to create more of it. The accidents on set, Jae-yun said. They're not random. These things are causing them to scare people. Yes, Han-sol replied. And each time someone gets scared, they get stronger. Do-hyun looked at his notes. That's why the incidents are getting worse. We're not dealing with one event at a time. We're dealing with something that's learning, growing, feeding. A loud crash came from the main set. They ran out of the meeting room. The big camera crane had fallen, missing a group of crew members by inches. On the wall behind it, bird marks were appearing, forming new symbols. What do those say? Do-hyun asked Han-sol. The old man's voice shook as he read them. They say, the door is almost open. Jae-yun grabbed Do-hyun's arm. The next scene. It's the biggest one yet, the full possession scene. We have 40 people on set, lots of effects, everyone's nervous. A perfect feast, Han-sol whispered. Do-hyun looked at the burn marks, then, at his notes. We need to stop filming. Now. The studio won't agree, Jae-yun said. They've invested too much money. Then we need to find a way to close their door before they fully open it. Do-hyun turned to Han-sol. Your grandmother's books. Do they say anything about fighting these beings? Yes, Han-sol said. But you won't like it. To fight creatures that feed on fear, you have to give them something they're not ready for. Something that will choke them instead of feed them. What's that? Hope. The main stage was ready for the big possession scene. Lights hung from above, cameras waited in position, and the crew moved nervously around the set. Everyone could feel that something was wrong, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Do-hyun stood with Jae-yun and Han-sol behind the cameras. They had tried to convince the director to stop filming, but he wouldn't listen. We're already behind schedule, he had said. We filmed today. If they start this scene, the fear-eaters will have everything they need to break through, Han-sol whispered. All that emotion, all that fear in one place. Then we need to be ready, Do-hyun said. He had spent the last hour placing small metal discs around the set. Each one had symbols that Han-sol had drawn, ancient marks of protection. Places everyone. The director called. The actress walked to her position on the bed. She looked scared, and not just for the scene. Action. The scene began. The actress started her lines, talking about feeling strange, about something being inside her. The cameras rolled. The lights dimmed on cue. Then the temperature dropped. Not just a little, but so much that frost formed on the cameras. The actress's breath came out as white mist, but she kept going, thinking it was part of the effects. Blue flames appeared in the corners of the room, but they didn't burn anything. They just moved slowly across the walls, leaving those strange symbols behind them. Keep rolling, the director shouted. He thought it was all special effects. The lights began to flicker, and dark shapes moved in the shadows. The actress saw them, and real fear crossed her face. This wasn't acting anymore. "We need to stop this," Jae-yun said, moving toward the director, but Do-hyun held her back. "Wait," he said. "Watch the flames." The blue fires were hitting the metal discs he had placed. Each time they touched one, the flames changed color, turning from blue to gold. The shadows in the corners pulled back. But it wasn't enough. More blue flames appeared, and the shadows grew darker. The air felt heavy, like something was pressing down on everyone. Then the actress screamed, a real scream. In every shadow, eyes were opening. Hungry eyes. Watching eyes. The fear-eaters were coming through. "Now," Do-hyun shouted to Hansol. The old man began to speak words from his grandmother's books, ancient words of power. As he spoke, the metal discs began to glow. The fire and shadows pulled back more, but they fought against it. The fear in the room was making them stronger. People were panicking, trying to run, but the doors wouldn't open. "Jae-yun," Do-hyun called. "The lights." She understood. Running to the light controls, she turned everything up to full power. Bright light flooded the set, pushing the shadows back. But the fear-eaters weren't giving up. The blue flames grew higher, and the shadows deepened where they could. The metal discs were glowing brighter, but they were starting to crack. "It's not enough," Hansol shouted over the noise. "There's too much fear." Do-hyun looked around at the terrified people. Hansol was right. Their fear was feeding the creatures, making them stronger. They needed something else, something to break the fear. Then he remembered what Hansol had said about hope. Looking at the chaos around him, Do-hyun made a decision. It was risky, but they were out of options. He ran straight into the middle of the set, right where the shadows and flames were strongest. He had a plan, but first he had to get everyone's attention, including the fear-eaters. Do-hyun stood in the center of the chaos, watching the shadows and blue flames move around him. He felt their hunger, their desire to feed on fear, but now he could also sense something else: curiosity. The fear-eaters were interested in this human who dared to stand before them. "Everyone, listen to me," he called out. His voice was steady and calm. "These beings feed on fear. The more afraid we are, the stronger they become. But they have a weakness." The shadows swirled closer, their eyes fixed on him. The blue flames danced around his feet, but couldn't touch him. The metal discs Hansol had helped him place were creating a small safe space. Hae-nul Kang, the metaphysical expert Do-hyun had contacted earlier, pushed through the crowd. She carried an old book and a bag of strange equipment. "The research you asked for," she said, handing him the book. "They're not demons at all. They're more like mirrors." "Mirrors?" Jae-yun asked, moving closer despite her fear. "They reflect what we give them," Hae-nul explained. "Fear makes them stronger because they multiply it and send it back. But they have to reflect whatever emotion they receive. They can't change it." Do-hyun nodded. This confirmed what he had suspected. That's why the protective symbols work. They reflect positive energy, which disrupts the fear-eater's ability to feed. The shadows were gathering now, forming shapes that looked almost human. The temperature dropped even lower, and frost covered everything. The fear-eaters were preparing for something big. Hae-nul opened her bag and took out several crystal devices. "These are emotion amplifiers," she said. "They're used in scientific studies of paranormal events. They can strengthen whatever emotion is nearby." "Like fear?" Jae-yun asked nervously. "Or its opposite," Do-hyun said. He understood now. "Hansol, your grandmother's books talked about hope. These beings feed on fear because that's what humans usually give them when they appear. But what if we give them something else?" The old set designer's eyes widened. "A reflection trap. If we can make them reflect enough positive emotion, they'll either have to withdraw or be transformed by it." Hae-nul finished. She placed the crystal devices in a circle, matching the pattern of the metal discs. The fear-eaters seemed to sense the threat. The blue flames grew higher, and the shadows moved faster. Strange sounds filled the air, whispers, scratches, and things that might have been words. Everyone, Do-hyun called out again. Think about why we're here. We're making this movie not just to scare people, but to show that good can overcome evil. That light can defeat darkness. That hope is stronger than fear. Jae-yun understood first. She stepped forward, her fear turning to determination. We're creating something meaningful, she said loudly. Something that will inspire people. One by one, others joined in. The actress who had been so afraid stood up straight. The cameraman who had seen strange things raised his camera with purpose. Even the director, who had been so focused on schedules, remembered why he wanted to make this film. The crystals began to glow as the emotions in the room changed. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something stronger: purpose, courage, and hope. The fear-eaters reacted. Their shadows wavered, and the blue flames flickered. They were caught in their own trap, forced to reflect these new emotions they didn't understand. But Do-hyun knew they needed one more push to break their hold on this world. Min-ho Song, the cinematographer, watched the strange scene through his camera. The fear-eater's shadows showed up clearly on his screen, twisting and changing as they fought against the positive emotions filling the room. He had an idea. Do-hyun, Min-ho called out, light is emotion too. We use it every day to create feelings in our shots. What if we use the set lights? Do-hyun looked up at the complex lighting system above them. Can you control them all? Yes, we have everything from soft warm lights to harsh bright ones. We use them to create different moods. Min-ho moved to the lighting control panel. These beams reflect emotions. Let's show them every positive emotion we can create with light. Hanul quickly placed her crystal devices near the main lights. The crystals will amplify whatever emotional energy the lights carry, she explained. The fear-eaters sensed what they were planning. The shadows grew darker, and the blue flames burned higher. Cold wind whipped through the set, knocking over equipment and sending papers flying. Everyone hold on to something, Do-hyun shouted. He grabbed Jae-yun's hand as she nearly fell. Min-ho, now. Min-ho's fingers flew over the controls. First, he turned on the warm lights they used for happy scenes. Soft, golden light filled the space. The crystals caught it and made it stronger, filling it with feelings of comfort and peace. The shadows pulled back slightly, but the fear-eaters fought against it. Their blue flames pushed against the golden light. More, Hanul called out. Different emotions. Min-ho added the bright, clear lights they used for morning scenes. These carried feelings of hope and new beginnings. Then he turned on the lights they used for emotional reunions, full of love and joy. The crystals amplified each new emotion, sending waves of positive energy through the set. The fear-eaters couldn't handle so many different feelings at once. Their shadows began to break apart, and their blue flames turned different colors as they reflected the lights. But they weren't giving up. As their shadows faded, they let out a horrible sound, like 1,000 screams mixed together. Equipment crashed to the floor. The walls shook. It's working, Han-sol shouted over the noise. But we need something stronger, something they can't resist reflecting. Do-hyun looked around at everyone on the set. The crew who had faced their fears, the actors who had stayed despite the danger, and his new friends who had helped him understand what they were fighting. Min-ho, he called out, the triumph lights, the ones you use for the biggest, most powerful moments, all of them. Min-ho understood. He pushed every slider up to full power. All the lights blazed at once. Warm gold, bright white, and every color in between. The crystals glowed like small suns, amplifying not just the light but the emotion behind it. The fear-eaters had no choice. They had to reflect what they were given. Their shadows turned to light. Their blue flames transformed into rainbow colors. The horrible screaming changed to something else, something almost like music. For a moment, the whole set was filled with pure light and positive emotion. Everyone felt it. A wave of triumph, hope, and joy all mixed together. The fear that had fed the creatures was gone, replaced by something much stronger. Then, slowly, the light began to fade. The fear-eaters were gone, but they had left something behind. On every surface, new symbols glowed softly. Hansol looked at them in wonder. "What do they say?" Jae-yun asked quietly. The old man smiled. "They say lesson learned." 1 week after the incident, the movie set was back to normal. The crew worked steadily, finishing the remaining scenes. The strange fires were gone, and no more shadows appeared in the corners. But things were different now. Do-hyun sat in the director's chair, watching the final scene being filmed. Jae-yun stood next to him, holding her clipboard. "It's amazing how everyone just accepted what happened," she said quietly. "People believe what they want to believe," Do-hyun replied. "Most of the crew thinks it was all special effects. A few know the truth, but they'll keep it to themselves." On set, Min-ho adjusted the lights one last time. He had kept the lighting setup from that night, though now he used it differently. Every scene had layers of emotional light in it, making the movie feel more real, more powerful. "The studio executives are very happy," Jae-yun said. "They say the footage we got that night is incredible. They think it was all planned." Do-hyun smiled. The executives had watched the footage of the Fear Eater's transformation and called it revolutionary special effects. They didn't need to know it was real. Hansol walked over, carrying a small wooden box. "The last of the protection symbols are in place," he said. "No more uninvited visitors will come through here." He opened the box and showed them what was inside. A small crystal lay on a bed of silk. Inside it, blue and golden light swirled together. "A reminder," Hansol explained. "When the Fear Eaters change, they left this behind. It's not dangerous anymore. Now it's a tool for understanding." Hanul appeared with her equipment packed away. "The energy readings are normal now," she reported. "But something interesting happened. The positive emotions we used that night, they left a mark. This place feels different. Better." She was right. Everyone could feel it. The set had a warm, peaceful feeling now. Even the darkest scenes they filmed couldn't change that. "Action," the director called. They watched as the actress performed her final scene. She moved differently now, with confidence instead of fear. Her performance was stronger because she had faced real darkness and won. "Will they come back?" Jae-yun asked quietly. "The Fear Eaters?" "Not here," Do-hyun said. "They learned that humans are more than just food sources. We showed them that fear isn't our strongest emotion." The scene finished, and the director called cut for the last time. The crew cheered. Filming was complete. As people began to pack up, Do-hyun took one last walk around the set. In quiet corners, he could still see faint traces of the symbols, not the scary ones from before, but the new ones that meant lesson learned. He thought about what they had discovered. The Fear Eaters weren't evil, just hungry. They had never encountered emotions stronger than fear before. Now they knew better. Jae-yun found him later in the empty screening room, watching the footage from that night. On screen, the shadows transformed into light, creating images more beautiful than any special effect could make. "What will you tell your boss back in Korea?" she asked. "The truth," Do-hyun said. "That we found something new, something that changed how we understand the supernatural. And that sometimes, the best way to fight darkness isn't with more darkness, but with light." He closed his notebook and stood up. His job here was done. The movie would be finished soon, and audiences would watch it, feeling emotions they couldn't quite explain. They would leave theaters feeling stronger, braver, more hopeful. And somewhere, in the space between worlds, the Fear Eaters would remember what they had learned on this movie set, that human emotions were more powerful than they had ever imagined.